Well, thanks for joining us for tonight's webinar, Mischief Managed, the way in which Harry Potter transfixed a generation. I'm Greg Berry, Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Since we're virtual, please excuse any technical issues or glitches that may pop up. If you experience issues with your video or audio, click the reconnect button on your screen to get back to the webinar right away. A quick note, the webinar is being recorded. We'll have a replay available on our website by tomorrow. Also, if you have any questions for our two guests tonight, be sure to drop them in the chat. We'll have time for Q&A at the conclusion. Tonight, we're excited to welcome a pair of Potterheads. Ebony Harris is the Director of Development in the UAB School of Public Health and earned degrees from Eureka College and the University of Illinois. She considers herself a proud member of the Hufflepuff House. Jen Ivey is a regional engagement specialist here at UAB. She also holds two degrees, one from Illinois State University, the other from the University of Colorado, Denver. Jen is a Ravenclaw. Before we turn things over to our guests, I want to ask the audience, which of the four houses do you belong to? Let me go ahead, get to the poll, and get that launched. I thought I had the right keystrokes, and I didn't, so here we go. There you have it. Are you a Gryffindor, like Harry himself, Hermione, Dumbledore, and Longbottom? Maybe you're a Hufflepuff, like Newt Scamander, Cedric Diggory, and Nymphadora Tonks. Perhaps you're a Ravenclaw, like Luna Lovegood and Cho Chang. Or maybe you're a Slytherin, like Voldemort, Severus Snape, or Horace Slughorn. Take a moment to select your house. As you may know, the house that you're part of says a lot about you and is well documented online within the Potterverse. And just a reminder, we are recording tonight's session. You'll be able to find a replay on our website, alumni.uab.edu/Harry-Potter, starting tomorrow afternoon. If you have questions during tonight's presentation, be sure to drop them in the chat. So taking a look, a majority of you, almost 50%, say you are a Gryffindor. Second right now is Ravenclaw. Slytherin, 13% is third, and Hufflepuff is fourth with 10%. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead, end the poll almost up to 50%. We're at 48% Gryffindor. I'm going to welcome you two ladies, Potterheads Ebony Harris and Jen Ivey. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening.
Thanks, Greg. And I am not going to take it personally offensive that there are not more members of Hufflepuff in the house. That's okay. I won't hold it against anybody. But before we jump in, I have to do two more things to explain how big of a Potterhead I am. First off, I brought a very special item with me today. I do not take this off the shelf very often, but I brought my Elder Wand. As any good Potterhead knows, this is one of the most powerful wands in the universe. So this is just for you all. So I have that. And then the other thing, to my husband's disdain that I have to share with you all, is I have three boys, and I have taught them all to say Harry Potter with, forgive my accent, as Harry Potter growing up. So as they were 1 and 2, anytime we went out to the store and they saw something, it was not, Mom, look at Harry Potter. It was, Mom, look at Harry Potter. So step 2, that's how I am a huge Potterhead. But thanks for those intro, Greg. So before we jump off, we just wanted to take a moment to really look at how big of a cultural impact the Harry Potter book series has had since Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was first introduced into the world in June of 1997. I was 10 at that time, and nearly 26 years later, both the book and the subsequent film series still have so much relevance, both in my life and in the lives of so many others. Did you know, this is my did you know fact, since its launch, Harry Potter has sold 500 million copies worldwide, and 180 million, so almost 200 million, comes directly from the United States alone. There is no arguing with the fact that Harry Potter has played a major role in reviving interest in children's reading and literature, not just for one generation, but for multiple. Not only this, but it also made it acceptable for adults to read and become engrossed in books that were really, in essence, created for young people, created for children. This really hadn't been seen before. Without this, we very well may not have seen the success of other series that would later cross the same divide, like The Hunger Games, Twilight, Divergent, Maze Runner, and others. Really, to be completely frank, the 7-part Harry Potter series changed the literary and publishing industry as we know it. And there are a few different ways that this was done, and I'm just going to hone in on a couple of them. First off, it made it possible to do longer works aimed at children. This was something that wasn't seen as popular or sellable in the publishing industry at the time. Towards the latter half of the book series, each of the books were actually nearly 700 pages long. I still remember reading one of the books when I was in school, taking it with me, and having a friend say, Ebony, why are you bringing your Bible with you? It was not my Bible. It was Harry Potter. Following this trend, between 2006 and about 2016, middle grade books grew in page length by over 100%, and that can be attributed to the success of longer Harry Potter books. As one reviewer once said, publishers discovered with Harry Potter that kids will read a lot of fantasy, and they'll read big books. Rather than publishing books just like Harry, they started to publish fantasy and take chances on unusual fantasy at that. Harry Potter led to a new golden age, and I love that because it truly did. The success of the series is actually what led to the New York Times to add a children's bestsellers list because they were taking up too much space in the general bestsellers category. Not only this, but as we just talked about a little bit earlier, it got a whole generation of adults reading again, whether it was them reading the stories to their kid at bedtime or whether it was them picking up the books to de-stress from their daily lives. Another way the series transformed the literary landscape during its initial drop was that J.K. Rowling, and I love this, J.K. Rowling created characters to age as the readers did in real time. And as such, the level of difficulty increased with each book as well. Just as your level of difficulty grew from childhood or, for example, the Sorcerer's Stone to adolescence when you're looking at the Half-Blood Prince or the Deathly Hallows. She made it grow with them. But now, since we've discussed a little bit about how the series transformed the world on a much broader scale, we thought we'd take a look at how it also made it okay for readers to be different. The Harry Potter series paved the way for what we call geek culture to become socially acceptable. And for all of my Star Wars geek culture folks out there, may the fourth be with you as well. The series could not have come at a more perfect time. Its release corresponded with really the start of the internet era for millennials, those who were children at that time. As more and more of these children, and also as we talked about earlier, adults became active online and found their own Potter communities via chat rooms, etc., embracing the entire fandom became more commonplace. At the same time, Harry Potter conventions began to bring thousands of fans out. Some even credit the Harry Potter series, the book series, not the movie series, because this was prior to the movies being released. But some even credit the Harry Potter book series with bringing cosplay into the mainstream. Because at these Harry Potter conventions, which predated the movies, folks would come out in full Harry Potter garb. In addition, Harry Potter had a leading role in launching the release day phenomenon. I don't know how many on this Zoom participated in these, but when the books came out, folks would line up for hours and hours outside of Barnes and Noble or Books A Million or whatever their local bookstore was to get the book, to have their hands on the book for the very first time. And this was something that had not been seen before. Really, all of this shows that there is a clear reason why, decades later, nearly 3 decades later, people like us are still talking about and still obsessed with this book, this movie series, and as many of you have probably heard, a TV series, which is going to be produced by HBO Max. So now I wanted to look a little bit at why this became so popular. And I think an element of it is because of escapism. So escapism is the central theme among Harry Potter, and as it is among many other genres and fandoms. But for Harry Potter fans, this started in the very beginning of our adolescence, of our childhood. Some studies have shown that Harry Potter books have led to children understanding and wanting to have a role in bringing about social change. Am I saying that Harry Potter alone led to millennials being one of the most social justice-oriented generations? No. But could it have played a role? I think so, maybe. For many, the concept of purebloods versus half-bloods versus mudbloods versus muggles, as Jen will talk about a little bit later, was how they became more exposed to the concept of discrimination or intolerance. Through these books, children were able to see the devastating impact that those sentiments could have. So true, these books may not have made young people better per se, but there is no doubt that it aided in teaching them about concepts such as tolerance. The amazing thing is, though, many people do not know at all the full length and complicated history behind how Harry Potter came to be. And I'm so excited to have Jen here now to talk a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say Ebony did not warn me we were doing show and tell today. But I'm such a Potterhead that I had a time turner within a foot of my desk. So I guess that's my show and tell. I've always loved Hermione as a kid. I very much identified with her. So there's my show and tell. Anyways, Ebony was saying, so of course from the mind of J.K. Rowling came this entire world for Hogwarts and Harry and all of our other characters. As a lot of you may know, she had her first idea for Harry Potter in 1990. J.K. Rowling was delayed on a train from Manchester to London when she first had the idea for Harry. And she describes the experience as he just came as a character fully formed to her brain. So she started to write down notes on napkins as she was stuck on this train. When she finished her book, she had a really hard time getting it published. It was rejected by over a dozen publishers before it was finally picked up by a publishing house called Bloomsbury. And it was actually picked up because the chairman of the publishing house gave the book to his daughter, and she loved it and immediately wanted the next book. So that was a big part of why she got published in the first place. But she was still encouraged to keep her day job because they told her that it was impossible to make a living writing children's books. Of course, we now know that they were wrong, and she definitely proved them wrong in that scenario. I don't think she needs a day job anymore. So in case anyone on this webinar doesn't know, just kind of a brief synopsis of Harry Potter. So Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was founded by 2 wizards and 2 witches. So that's Godric Gryffindor, Rowena Ravenclaw, Helga Hufflepuff, and Salazar Slytherin. This is also where the names of each Hogwarts house comes from. So Harry was orphaned at a young age and raised by his non-magical and rather unsupportive aunt and uncle. Then at the age of 11, he discovers that he is in fact a wizard and prepares to attend Hogwarts. So over the next 7 years, we follow Harry's journey through the wizarding world, specifically with a focus on his conflict with Lord Voldemort. So as you know, Voldemort is our overarching villain, and he is finally defeated by Harry during the Battle of Hogwarts in the last book. So we can also see a lot of comparisons that J.K. Rowling drew from her own life, as many authors do when they're writing. So for instance, Rowling's mother died when she was 20 years old, when Rowling was 20 years old. So making Harry an orphan and all of his subsequent interactions with death really kind of helped her work through her own complicated emotions surrounding her mother's death. Another good example are the Dementors. So Dementors were meant to symbolize her fight with depression during her 20s. So she described the feeling of the Dementors and of her depression as not just a sadness, but a cold absence of feeling. And that's really how she saw her depression during that time. So that was meant to kind of reflect that experience for her. We can also see lots of parallels between the Harry Potter universe and real-world historical events, as well as well-known stories throughout religion and mythology. For instance, in terms of religion, Christianity definitely has some pretty close parallels with this story, and a lot of people have made those comparisons. The most common connection, of course, is between Harry Potter and Jesus Christ. So as we know, Jesus sacrificed himself to save humanity within the realm of the Christianity universe. And similar in the Harry Potter universe, Harry dies to save his friends and sacrifices himself. Similarly, also Patronuses are kind of seen as a guardian angel protecting Harry. So these are just some things that you can kind of see comparisons with religion. But you can also see other types of religion as well. For instance, there's a lot of pagan themes in Harry Potter. For instance, magic, astrology, spirit animals, alchemy. All of this we see throughout the series and are also definitely reflected in other religions as well. Similarly, there are a lot of ties to mythology in Harry Potter. For instance, Minerva is the Roman goddess of wisdom, Athena being her Greek counterpart. So Minerva is known in mythology as a fierce goddess who is wonderful in battle, but also has a lot of knowledge and brings knowledge to men. As we know, the character of McGonagall is, of course, a professor and holds a lot of knowledge, but she also shows, how important she can be and how helpful she is in the Battle of Hogwarts as well. So that's definitely a direct correlation to that character in mythology. Another one we can see is Remus Lupin. In mythology, Remus is a son of Ares. He also had a twin brother named Romulus. Remus and Romulus are, they're known as the legendary founders of the city of Rome in Italy. They were also raised by wolves. So therefore, it makes sense that our character of Remus Lupin is a werewolf. And you can even see in the 7th book that Lupin chooses the name Romulus as one of his secret code names when he is featured on Potter Watch. So that's kind of a nod to mythology as well. And then a classic, of course, we have our favorite 3-headed dog, Fluffy. In mythology, there's a similar dog named Servius who's said to have 50 heads, and he guards Hades, the underworld. Similarly, Fluffy in the 1st book is a 3-headed dog who guards the trapdoor to the Sorcerer's Stone. There are also a few comparisons to historical events. For instance, Rowling herself has said that a lot of parts of the story were inspired by the Holocaust. So she has stated that phrases like pure blood, half-blood, muggle-born, all of those are kind of inspired by people who were classified as Aryan versus Jewish by Hitler. World War II definitely has a lot of similarities to the war we see between Voldemort and the rest of the Wizarding world. So Voldemort has this crusade against those without magical blood. And of course, he's also helped along by his loyal followers, the Death Eaters, who are very similar to Nazis. You may also see readers have made comparisons between the comparison of werewolves in the series with the HIV and AIDS epidemic. So in the 1980s and 90s, of course, we know people with HIV and AIDS were treated very poorly. Similarly, in the Wizarding world, everyone is incredibly prejudiced against werewolves, and the character of Remus Lupin continuously tries to keep his status as a werewolf a secret. So this is very similar to the treatment of other people during that time with HIV and AIDS when the book was written. So that was also very topical at the time. So these are just a few examples of, maybe why this story has kind of stood the test of time. We've been telling stories like these for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So these are, some adult themes that she really reworked and made them work for children, something that she's done very, very well. So then I will pass it back to Ebony.
Awesome, thanks, Jen. And I love seeing all the conversations happening in the chat pod, especially who your favorite character is outside of Harry. Some really interesting folks pointed out there. So, we've looked at both the cultural impact and the history of Harry Potter, but we thought we'd pivot and look at exactly who is Harry Potter, who is the boy who lived. But more than that, what makes him so relatable? Often, as any good author does, J.K. Rowling modeled her characters off of people in her actual life. So many of the Harry Potter characters are individuals that she knew personally. So, for example, one of her neighbors was Ian Potter, and so that's who she mimicked Harry after. She described him as a mischievous trickster who used to dress up like a wizard when they were younger. But what is it exactly about the Harry we know that we love so much? What makes him special? One thing I have to say is his resilience. Harry showed us that you can truly overcome anything, especially, and I think this is key, especially if you have friends by your side. He showed us that we aren't meant to walk through this life alone and that having a community is crucial. Despite the cards that he was dealt, Harry never lost the love and compassion that he became so famous for. And as we know, Harry Potter is Harry Potter because the love that his mother had, which caused her to lose her life, but that sacrifice saved him. So love has been rooted throughout his entire story. There were times that this love he had wavered and anger may have gotten the best of him, but he never ever succumbed to those feelings, which is, I think different things we go through in different seasons of our very own lives. You know, all of us, no matter who we are, can see at least some part of ourselves in Harry, whether it is feelings of loneliness we tackle during adolescence, or bravery we feel when we stand up against injustice, the love we feel for those who have played pivotal roles in our lives, or countless other ways. Saying all of this, another thing that makes Harry so relatable is he is far from perfect. So even though he has that love and those attributes, he's not perfect. He can be selfish and reckless at times. I know many of you might have seen their shirts going around, you know, saying that Neville could have done it in 5. So instead of 7 books, Neville Longbottom could have done it in 5 books, because many people feel that Harry was relatable, but also really selfish and reckless at times, and that may have slowed down his progress in the book series. One reviewer stated that because of Harry, there is a certain level of hope. He's not perfect. We get this from reading about someone like ourselves who actually ends up with a happy ending, although they didn't have a perfect childhood or a perfect life. So he showed us that it's okay to be raised in difficult circumstances, but still end up with that happy ending. And I think those are, you know, there's so many other elements that makes Harry so relatable, but those are just some of the key ones. But we all know about Harry Potter, right? We all know about his story and his trajectory. But really, one thing we wanted to talk about, one thing that was really crucial to the book series, is there's no way we cannot talk about 2 of the most debated characters in the series. And I don't know if anyone has any guesses as to who those 2 folks are. But in my opinion and in Jen's opinion, we think those 2 most controversial, debated characters really are Albus Dumbledore and Severus Snape. So before I keep going, in the chat, if you guys can share, do you think Albus Dumbledore is a hero or a villain? And then do you think Severus Snape is a hero or a villain? And then I'm gonna share my opinion on that. So Dumbledore, we're gonna get started with him first. Albus Dumbledore is the very first wizard you meet in the initial pages of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and his role throughout the entire series cannot be understated. Oh, again, this is only my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But although he is generally presented as a hero, when you look deeper, there are many things that can be brought into question. So for example, would a hero drop off a child at someone's home who he knew would not love that child as they should be loved? Would a hero at times in his life hold dark wizard views, and in his thirst for power end up inadvertently having a role in his sister's death? And central to the series, would a hero allow Tom Riddle, who turns into Voldemort, to attend Hogwarts and equip him with everything he knew he needed to become a dark wizard? Because Dumbledore saw those dark tendencies and yet put him in Hogwarts and still foster some of those. And in one of the most infamous scenes in the book, Snape even calls out Dumbledore for raising up Harry in essence as a pig for slaughter, which of course Dumbledore can't deny. So is that something a hero would do? But despite these things though, Dumbledore did so much incredible good. As he's known really as by far one of the greatest wizards ever known. And even with that acclaim, he chose to serve the next generation of witches and wizards by becoming the headmaster of Hogwarts. In my mind, this is similar to someone with immense power in the world today, thinking of a Fortune 500 company CEO, Jeff Bezos, or someone like that, leaving their Fortune 500 job at the peak of their career to work as a principal of a high-need inner-city school. In the Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore even protected his students by taking on Voldemort alone, who no one can deny Voldemort was indeed a very powerful wizard. And in his own, albeit twisted way, Dumbledore prepared Harry for the tumultuous path that lay in front of him. And these are some of the reasons why Dumbledore is often described the title of hero. But take a moment to think about it. Is it the title he truly deserves or not? But if you think Dumbledore is complex, just wait until we take a closer look at Severus Snape. Some call him an antagonist turned anti-hero, but I'm not sure that's quite true. Snape's big reveal about his true motives comes to life in the Prince's Tale chapter of the Deathly Hallows. If you have not read that chapter recently, please go back and do it. I reread it again in preparation for the webinar, and I hadn't read it in years, and it just takes your breath away. So if you have not read it, go back to The Prince's Tale. And this is perhaps one of the biggest and most impactful surprises of the entire series. I still remember being on my bed as if it were yesterday, reading this probably at 2:00 in the morning because I cannot put the book down, getting to that chapter and being completely taken aback. In my opinion, Snape is one of the most complex characters in the entire series. There are many times throughout the books he single-handedly saves Harry. There are also many examples I can give, but I don't want to go into all of them. But for example, he attempted to save the Potters after he found out that Voldemort wanted them dead. He protected Harry from Professor Quirrell and Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. He taught Harry how to protect his mind so that Voldemort could not invade. He did many, many, many good things. But in my opinion, Snape is truly two different sides of the same coin. For every single good act he did, almost every single act he did, the other side held a more selfish motive. So on one side of the coin, he saved the Potters. But on the other side, he really just wanted to save Lily, the love of his life. On one side of the coin, he protected Harry, Ron, and Hermione from Lupin as a werewolf. On the other side of the coin, out of his anger, he also outed Lupin his condition prior to this happening. On one side of the coin, he was serving Dumbledore. On the other side of the coin, for many years, he served the Death Eaters. Again, one coin, but very different sides. I read this quote that I love specifically about The Prince's Tale. Severus Snape's sacrifice was perhaps one of the most powerful one in the series. What he did not do it for glory or even for Harry's moral cause. He did it for Lily and his eternal promise of love. And this is, as every good Harry Potter fan knows, when you read the book or get to the scene in the movie, Snape releases his Patronus. His Patronus is shaped as Lily's Patronus. And Dumbledore said, after all this time, and the one word he says that we all know is always. His love for her never left. So did he truly protect Harry for Lily, or did he protect Harry for Harry? That's a hard question. And so that's one I really want to, we want to make sure we leave time at the end, but I want to leave you on that question. Is Snape a hero? Is Dumbledore a hero? I don't think there's a clear answer. Both of these individuals have shown us that you can be both at the same time, hero and villain. It really just depends on the lens that you are looking at it through. So on that note, Greg, I don't know if we want to open it up for a few different questions just to see what others think about Snape and Dumbledore. We'd love to have a conversation.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And if you do have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll have them addressed. We'll get Jen and Ebony to answer those. And it's interesting. It seems like a vast majority of the people that have tossed it in chats say both. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just very interesting to see what others think. So, I'm going to throw this out there as the chat continues and we get questions rolling in. Books versus movies. Which one do you guys prefer and why? Jen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think as a lot of people, specifically in my, I'm a millennial, so I grew up right as Harry was as well. So I was reading the books as they came out. So for me, I think reading the books ahead of time, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for the books. That being said, I love the movies as well, but for me, it's books.
Ebony?
I'd have to follow Jen. I love the movies because it takes the images that I had in my head and puts it onto the screen. Mm-hmm. The actors are phenomenal. I will never get tired of Harry Potter. Do I think they need to make a new series about Harry Potter? No. But will I watch every one? Of course, I will. But the books are so detailed and they paint the characters in a much more robust light. Jen and I were actually talking about this earlier as we were preparing for the webinar. Even like Ginny Weasley's character, we saw no progression of their relationship on screen, right? It went from, you're my best friend's sister to I love you. As compared in the book, she was much more multifaceted and you saw that relationship grow. So for that reason alone, I'd say, and other reasons, I'd say the books, but the movies are beautiful.
I was going to say the same. I see someone in the chat mention Ginny, and we just had a conversation about that the other day. I loved Ginny growing up and was very disappointed with her in the movies. But I guess that, if I'm sure a lot of y'all are readers, and it happens a lot when they remake your favorite book into a movie. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In general, I think these do, but there are certain points that the book lovers get upset at, for sure.
100% of the chat is pro book. Every single person, I think if there's probably 10 or more who dropped it in the chat, said the book over the movies. Now, Ebony, you have 3 boys in your house, if I remember right. Have you started reading the books to them? Have they started reading the books, or have you introduced them to the movies so they kind of get on mom's level with everything?
You're bringing up a sore spot, Greg, because I have tried. My 2 younger ones are 2 and 6, so they're too young for it now, but I have a 9-year-old. And I got him the book, the one that has graphics and is much more colorful. And I said, let's read it together. And we got through about 2 chapters, and he was like, it's okay. I was like, no, keep going. And Hagrid and Dumbledore, there's so much to it. But they're not quite there yet. I am not above bribing. So I have bribed him that if he reads the whole book, we will have a Harry Potter movie marathon for the age-appropriate movies, which are, kind of 1 through 3. But to my disdain, not yet. But I'm working on it.
This is a series that dates back, 3 decades at this point? It has really kind of gotten into the sense of everybody. I told both of you, I'm not a huge Harry Potter guy, but I know everybody knows about Harry Potter. Sure. What was the defining moments for each of you that really sucked you in, where you really, really, really embraced Harry and that wizarding world?
That's a good question. I think I really loved, kind of like we talked about earlier, the escapism of it. The idea as a kid. I think I started reading them when I was 9 or 10, so I wasn't quite 11, and I knew it wasn't real, but part of me was waiting for that letter in the mail on my 11th birthday saying I was going to Hogwarts, and of course that didn't happen. I'm still waiting. I'm 31. I'm still waiting. But I think something about that just idea of this whole other world you haven't even seen, the exploration of that, that's what always really appealed to me.
I mean, mine is so similar to yours, Jen. I still remember, I think I can even remember like the scene is when the letters were coming out of the fireplace. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? It's a book that it enthralls you, it pulls you in, and it makes, I grew up in, had some aspects of my childhood were difficult. So in that moment, I was not there any longer. I was in the situation that Harry was in. I was living through him. And I escaped where I was and entered a whole new space where magic was possible. So that alone, that scene and then that concept is really what pulled me in.
You guys brought up the parallels with real life. That's something that, a 9, 10, 11-year-old probably really doesn't make that connection. At what point did you guys make that connection and go, you know what? There's substance to these books more than just entertainment.
That's definitely something that you realize later on. Again, as I was reading as a teenager and all of the books weren't out yet, I was very deep into fan theories of what was going to happen and what we were going to see in the next book. So I think for me, that's where it started, seeing on message boards and different groups. Especially for me, it was the mythology, people kind of comparing characters to their mythological counterparts and therefore making predictions about what would happen. I was convinced Remus Lupin had a twin. He doesn't. That one didn't come true. But I think that's what started to open my eyes to that. But really, even now, I did a reread last summer. And specifically with the Holocaust parallels, when you kind of look at it through that lens, you see a lot more of the real world and some of those real emotions and how she was able to capture those and package them up in a way that was digestible for children. But as an adult, you go back and read it and say, oh my gosh, so much of that was over my head at the time, that imagery.
I think really for me, it was seeing the othering in the book, right? In the initial pages, J.K. Rowling begins to paint that picture. The othering that the Dursleys had for Harry because of his bloodline and because he was a wizard. The othering that the purebloods had for the Muggles and the Half-Blood, like all of that, seeing that they're treating others different. And what is the cause of that? And kind of like we talked about earlier, in her very, unique way, she painted a picture for things that were happening in real life. So whether that is racism or stigma of individuals with HIV and AIDS, for me as a child, I would not have understood that fully. But when I see a wizard and a non-wizard don't get along, in my imagination in this magical world, it made sense. But as an adult, it took me looking back to see that's exactly what she was doing.
You guys focused a lot on the villains / heroes with Severus and with Voldemort. Does it take a while to warm up to those two characters just because of who they are? Or did you find yourselves at a young age kind of going, all right, this is kind of cool?
I couldn't stand Snape. There's no part of me that liked him.
He's hard to love at the beginning. Yeah, he is. It's tough.
I didn't. It took the one of the last books. And after he killed Dumbledore, I was like, oh, I'm through. Like, I can't do anything more with this man. But it was honestly in that very last book, that redemption arc is one of the biggest reveals in literary history that I feel. Because you saw him through a different lens. You may have seen bits and pieces like, okay, maybe he's not bad. Maybe he has some redemption. But it was in that moment you saw how this traumatized young boy turned into a traumatized young man, but would do anything for the woman he loved. And Dumbledore, it goes back and forth. I remember always loving him because he was a father figure. But as the books progressed, you saw there's some manipulation there that I don't know if it's right. And there's some secrecy there, and I don't know if it's right. And should you be doing that to a teen? There's kind of different.
Yeah, I would say, again, very similar to you, Ebony. And I think the manipulation portion, I think I was 18 or 19 when the last book came out. So then it's, this big revelation that Snape has been a good guy all along. But it took a few more years for me to really think about it and go back and read the first few books and see that his treatment of Harry is still pretty horrible at times. Because I had really just accepted him as a hero, and it takes longer for you to kind of think about all of the motivations. But as someone said in the chat, we all have light, we all have dark. And I think that's one of the reasons that this series has lasted as long as it has, because the characters are very well developed and we really get to see a lot of different sides of them, which I think is great. So
I love seeing in the chat.
There is no love for Umbridge.
That's what I was going to say.
For that, yes.
Umbridge is done. There's nothing. No arc.
There's no discussion of the good and bad of Umbridge. Yes.
Ebony and I have been talking about doing this webinar for quite some time. I want to say it's going on 18 months, and we finally got it to go. And I appreciate both of you being here. One of your concerns was the politicalness, and I don't want to go derail everything, but can you separate art from artist?
Yeah, I think that's what's important about this book. And I know there are various opinions on this, but I do feel the world of Harry Potter, of Hogwarts, of what it created, goes beyond the author. And it will live well beyond her lifetime. And I really compare it to, and even at a greater level, to what you see with J.R.R. Tolkien, with C.S. Lewis, individuals who have long passed, but we're still talking about their work today. So in my opinion, I think the world goes beyond her. And it's something that's going to continue to grow and to thrive and to have new iterations of it. And I love that what it created is something that had never been seen before, a love of reading, a love of literacy, and a love for acceptance. So that's what I would say.
Where do you see, because you mentioned a TV series that's going to be on HBO coming out. Where do you see the Harry Potter universe kind of going from here? Is it going to take shape, do you think? And become totally different, where it's really separating itself from the books, or are they going to try to stay true to the books? Because we've kind of seen the books already, so what's new?
Yeah, we were just discussing the HBO series, which we would love to hear in the chat what you all think about that, what your opinions are on it. We didn't anticipate seeing a remake or whatever this is this quickly. It does seem kind of fast, especially just because, the movies are so beloved. And the last one came out, 10 years ago? It hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
But as Ebony said earlier, I will still be watching. So, at this point, we've seen Harry on page in the big screen. We're about to see him on the small screen. There are Broadway plays. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of iterations of this story throughout time. And when you create a world that's that big, it's very similar to Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, going on with the Hobbit series. I think we're going to continue to see adaptations for a long time, I would think.
And I think it'll be really interesting too to see it through the eyes of this generation, because I feel like they're really going to add in different dynamics based on what is happening present day as compared to 2001. So again, I don't think they needed to do it, but they are. And given that they are, I hope that they are true to the books, right? They said that they really want to bring in elements of the books that weren't seen in the movies. So I really do hope we don't just see a copy and paste of the movies, but different aspects of it, like the progression of Ginny's character, or, so much more, so we can get a better picture of it.
What is the most Harry Potter thing that you've ever done? I know, Ebony, you got the wand. I'd probably call it a wand, and it's called something.
This might be an embarrassing question today.
Okay, second most craziest thing. But I mean, Ebony, you're wearing a tie, you're wearing the shirt. People take this stuff serious, and I love that about it, because it just shows the passion that people have for Harry.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if it can get any worse than forcing your children to speak with a fake British accent. I'm not proud that I did that.
That's pretty high up on the list.
So I'd have to say that.
I would say for me, I was definitely a midnight book release girl. Also, if any of you have been here, I would love to hear about it. But if you go to London, there is a Harry Potter studio tour. So they have an American one that kind of travels around, but the one in London, you get to see the real set and the real artifacts. And I'm telling you, at the beginning of this tour, they open those doors to the Great Hall, and the real Great Hall is in front of you. And my friend and I laughed because people older than us and people younger than us were all like, oh, that's so nice. But people right in our age range, in that Harry Potter generation, cried. Every single one of us. We just bawled. Because it really felt like it was coming to life. So if you are ever in London, do not miss that tour. It's amazing.
Jen, it reminds me, every single time, I've seen the movies millions of times, but when they show the panorama of Hogwarts and you hear the music, I get chills every time. And you're brought to tears, because it's like, you're here, you're home. My husband jokes around. He's like, if you were to get your Hogwarts letter, we'd never see you again, right? I was like, no, you're right. You would not, because it feels like a place that you belong to.
I love this question, and if you're able to address it, it's fantastic. How do the books fare in other cultures, not just in the West, but also in the East, China, places like that? Do you guys have any idea how it's fared?
I know it's been translated into a lot of different languages. Harry Potter is definitely one of those things that no matter where you are, it seems that people have heard of it. Of course, fandom was biggest in the UK and in the US, but I know that it's definitely permeated a lot of other cultures as well.
I don't know a ton. I do know that even today, because this is something I randomly look into, is where they're releasing new Harry Potter attractions, and they're popping up around the world. There's one in Japan. They're opening up one in Ireland. We have the one in New York. We have, what's happening in Florida. Like they're still relevant, and these are still being created. So I think just if that's any indication that folks are still in love with it 30 years later there as they are here.
They've created a whole universe that people can go a lot closer than London. You can see Diagon Alley down in Orlando. I've been there. I had the butterbeer. I think that's what it's called, and it was delicious. I'm not going to lie. Have you guys been?
Yes.
You approve? Did it do justice?
Ebony, let's go.
I know.
Yes, it's so fun. I think the difference between London and Florida or California is everything in London it's the real thing from the movie. This is the real piece. Whereas in Orlando, everything is recreated. That being said, I absolutely love. I've only been once, but it was so fun, and the rides are incredible. I mean, it's just a great experience for any Potter fan, I think.
So we talked about some of the heroes, villains. We've talked obviously about Harry. Luna Lovegood got a lot of love in the chat. Why is that? What is it about Luna that makes her special?
I think she's okay to be different, and she embraces it wholeheartedly. She's, Looney Lovegood is what they would often call her, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter all of the hate she got, and that was directly inherited from her father, who's the exact same way. But I think she was okay being different, never felt like she needed to fit in anywhere, and that's fine.
I think she was also introduced during a time, Ebony and I were discussing the other day, that I think Harry in the 5th book in the Order of the Phoenix is the most annoying character of all time. He is 15. He is going through all of his 15-year-old hormones and emotions, and he's so in his head. And that book is so hard for me to read because I just don't like him as a character. But that being said, that is the same book that Luna is introduced. And I think she's a good counterpart to that, in that she is so herself. And at no point do you ever see Luna trying to be someone else or trying to fit a mold that she's supposed to fit. She is just so genuine and unique. And during a time where a lot of our other characters are trying to figure out who they are and where they fit in this world, and they're in these very stressful situations, for me, Luna was always a very nice constant of just kind of a light in the story. So I was glad to see that lots of people were dropping her name in the chat as well.
Do you think that the Slytherin house is too villainized?
Yes.
Yeah. 1000%. I do.
Absolutely. There are a lot of good characteristics to Slytherins. Of course, they get the bad rep of being Voldemort's house, and, the Malfoys are obviously complicated characters, but they lean more on the bad side, not as quite as much discussion for them. But no, they're definitely villainized too much. Slytherins are smart. And, if the world is ending, I want to be with a Slytherin. They're going to survive, I think there's some great characters in that house. And as we know, just in Harry Potter, a lot of the ones that are highlighted are not great characters, but no shame, Slytherin, none at all.
I think it's like, how they say, should the child pay for the sins of the father? This is like the great, 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 great grandfather, and you're still blaming the great, 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 great grandkids for what he did. And I don't think that's right. I think there's good and bad in all. There's light, as it was said, I forget which professor said it, when there's light, there's also darkness. And you have that in all houses.
There's fantastic chatter going on about now Orlando and Diagon Alley and just walking in, getting the chair bump.
Good.
When it comes to the wide array of characters, is there one that's underrated that you feel just does not get the respect or attention that he or she should?
Yes.
Who would you say, Ben?
Yeah, I was going to say, Tonks is one of my all-time favorites. I did see her name in the chat, so I know I'm not a solo Tonks lover, but I absolutely adore her. I think she is great and so brave and smart. But also Bellatrix Lestrange is one of my favorites. So I know, Greg, you're not a huge Harry Potter person. She's a Slytherin. She is absolutely on the bad side. So it's kind of a hate to love her sort of deal. But I just think she's great. I think she's such an interesting character and so fun. I love the depiction of her character in the movies. I'm a big Bellatrix fan. I dressed up as her for Halloween this year. So that one's mine.
I saw someone, Josh, say Molly Weasley. That's who I was going to say.
Molly
and
Weasley
I think,
is wonderful.
yeah, I think she was such a light. And she was, a mother figure in a time that Harry so desperately needed it. She took every single child under her wing. She took her limited resources and spread it vastly. She was a powerful witch at the same time. I love Molly. I think she deserves a lot. She deserves her roses, a lot more roses than what she got.
I do like where the chat's going. We need to take a trip.
I see that. I'm ready. I don't want to, volunteer Ebony for anything, but I'm definitely down for that.
I volunteer as tribute. I'm right there with you.
There's some Hunger Games in there.
Unless we get another question, I got one more question for you guys. And if one does get dropped in the chat, I'll get that. But where's the best Harry Potter podcast or the website just to get resources and to just kind of follow along with the fandom that is the Potterverse?
That's a good question. MuggleNet has been a website for a very long time. Again, Young Jen spent a lot of time there looking at the fan theories. I think the website still exists, but of course there's not as much to chat about. But they have an Instagram page that I follow. Also, is it called Pottermore? J.K. Rowling.
Is Pottermore still around?
It is, yes. And
okay.
That is an incredible resource. If you want to dive deep into some different characters and get different character synopses from Rowling herself, Pottermore is great. And they have a really fun Patronus quiz too. Mine is a hedgehog, in case anyone is wondering.
It sounds really similar. I have the Wizarding World app. So
okay.
When you sign up for the app and you can sign up to become a member, and of course I'm a member, they send you a book of your house and a pin that represents your house as well. And in it, you can go in there, you can take daily quizzes about different characters. It'll show you after you complete the quiz, like how many Slytherins got it right, how many from Hufflepuff got it right, etc. It gives you behind the scene knowledge and just different tidbits on today's Dumbledore's birthday and a little background on that person. So I'd say the Wizarding World app. And if you play the new game, the game aligns with the app. So if you play the new game that came out recently, you can align that with your app as well.
And I have just fact-checked myself, and Pottermore and wizardingworld.com, and I think that app as well, that is what it's all the same
one
thing. So Pottermore has rebranded.
It's now the Wizarding World.
Wizarding World. But so we're talking about the same place. So I guess Wizarding World.
And Wizarding World, that's where we actually pulled the which house are you in. So okay. I wish I would have asked that question a second time and encouraged people to go to that website, but then we would have lost our viewers, and I don't want to lose our viewers. Last question, then I'll let both of you go. Harry has his owl. Hermione has her cat. Hermione, sorry. What would your pet be?
I know my Patronus is a fox, but what would my pet be? I think I'd get a toad, like Neville. I think that would be mine.
I like that. I like how practical owls are. The sending of the mail is nice, but I'm very much a cat person. Anyone who knows me is I'm a very big animal and pet person. So I'd probably have one of each, honestly. But if I had to pick one, it would have to be a cat.
Ebony, Jen, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to spend with us, exploring this fascinating world. I've truly learned a lot, and I know the audience has been really engaged. This is one of our most active chats ever. So kudos to you guys and the topic. Again, thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. People who love Harry Potter love Harry Potter. So it was really nice chatting with all. Thank you guys for joining us. You bet. And a quick reminder, a recording of tonight's webinar will be uploaded on our website by tomorrow. As an attendee, you'll get an email with the replay link once it is ready. Be sure to join us for upcoming events. On May 18th, we're going to be hosting our third Blazer Bingo at the Alumni House here in Birmingham. Join us for a chance to win prizes. Your $25 registration includes 10 games of 6 boards, a green dauber, and food. We'll also have a cash bar available. Then join us virtually on May 23rd for the second of a 5-part series for parents of youth athletes. Brainstorming, a deeper look into the sports-related concussions. We'll explore why there's so much concern for concussions, how to treat them, and how long it takes to recover. On June 6th, come back because we're going to be mixing it up during our summer mixology webinar. Join Brian Rabin as we learn the fundamentals of 5 cocktails, including playing in the sand and a top shelf margarita. And on June 15th, we'll have the third of the 5-part series as we present Breaking It Down, Common Orthopedic Injuries in Sports. Join us as we take a close look at what injuries you should be most concerned with. You can register for these and more at alumni.uab.edu/events. Finally, share your thoughts about tonight's webinar and what you'd like to see in the future. The QR code on your screen will take you to a brief survey. Take a moment and let us know how we're doing. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for tonight's webinar. And as always, go Blazers.